Era's Notes on Dr. Neruda. Written May 27, 1998.
What follows are some of my notes taken while in earnest discussions with Dr. Neruda from the ASIO, Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, during the last 2 weeks of December 1997, before he disappeared, at least off my radar screen. Dr. Neruda is about 6 feet tall, perhaps 170 pounds, has relatively long black hair, and by all appearances, seems of Peruvian descent or at least from somewhere in South America, though I never asked what specific city or village he grew up in. I would guess he was about 50 years old with just a few tinges of grey hair. He called me out of the blue one day in mid-December 1997. His opening line to me was something like, "My name is Dr. Neruda, and I have secret information about the future of humankind that proves the existence of time travel technology." Being a journalist by profession, it got my attention, though the whole time I spent on the phone with him my skeptical nature was in high gear. I always assume stories of a fantastical nature are false in reality, though the perceiver can think them to be true. And so that's how I operated with Dr. Neruda. I felt him to be genuine and sincere, but probably misguided or in error. However, he was convincing enough to secure a meeting with me, and so we met a few days later at a coffee shop near my home. He didn't fit my stereotypical view of a scientist. He was much more sophisticated and even elegant in his demeanor, and looked as much like an executive of a Fortune 100 company as anything else. His charisma and articulate manner immediately impressed me, and I sensed that he was not a man of mental instability prone to wild claims. He told me that he had no recollection of his mother, and that his father brought him to the ASIO at an early age. A high-ranking member of the ASIO had taken him under his wing, so a considerable portion of his life was involved in one way or another with the ASIO. His father raised him as a single parent. He had been told that his mother had died from breast cancer shortly after his birth when he was only about 2 years old. He had attended the best private schools, and additionally had been provided with special tutors, which he later learned were from the ASIO. At the age of 14 he came under the formal tutelage of his future colleagues from the ASIO. By the time he was 17 he had left school and decided to pursue an internship at the ASIO, though he said that at the time, it was simply called the NSA. Special Projects Laboratory and was an unacknowledged department of the NSA. His internship lasted for 2 years and he never pursued a formal degree at a university, though he claimed to have knowledge about physics and the life sciences that is far in advance of the curriculums at the best universities. He stated that he believed himself to have possessed average intelligence until he began his training and internship at the ASIO. He said that they had technologies that stimulated certain aspects of the central nervous system and brain that increased raw intelligence by as much as 500%. In addition, he claimed that there was a genetic implant technology that increased the ability to memorize and retain information to the point where the entire scientific core of the ASIO had perfect photographic memory. This enabled them to build their group intelligence beyond the genius of any one individual. These technologies, he claimed, were of extraterrestrial origin derived from a friendly source that had been visiting Earth for thousands of years, but had arrangements with the ASIO dating from 1959 that were secret even from our government and its intelligence agencies. The alien race, which he called the Courtium, had infiltrated the ASIO in 1958, and though he wasn't specific about how this occurred, he did say that the Courtium are still working with the ASIO to seed technologies on Earth that are superior to our native technologies. The technologies to accelerate and enhance intelligence were the first technologies to be transferred, and these were to enable the ASIO scientists to assimilate and utilize subsequent technologies that the Courtium brought to the ASIO. In exchange for these technologies, the Courtium were provided safe haven within the ASIO intelligence structure. In other words, the Courtium were permitted access to all of the information systems of the ASIO, which are considerable according to Dr. Neruda. They were also able to use the facilities of the ASIO, including their laboratories, considerable land holdings, and scientific brainpower. This unfettered access to ASIO intelligence provided the Courtium leaders with insight into the structure of world government, where the power centers were, who the real leaders were, and how critical decisions were made for the world's people. According to Dr. Neruda, the Courtium are benevolent and had no ulterior motives to take over the earth and rule in dictatorship. In fact, they were much more interested in establishing diplomatic ties to the various world governments through the United Nations at the appropriate time, which was considered to be shortly after the year 2011. The existence of the Courtium was kept from the NSA, and even most ASIO personnel were unaware of their existence, though I don't know how this was accomplished. Within the ISHIO, there are 14 distinct levels of security clearance. Those who are at level 12 and above are aware of the Quantum Technology Transfer Program, TTP, and they, according to Dr. Neruda, are about 120 in number, and are primarily in India, Belgium, and the United States. There are only 7 who have level 14 clearance, and they are the Directors of Intelligence, Security, Research, Special Projects, Operations, Information Systems, and Communications. These directors report to the Executive Director, who is known simply as 15, which is the unique classification that is reserved for the head of the ISHIO. 15, in the eyes of Dr. Neruda, is the most powerful human on the planet, and what I think he meant by powerful is that 15 is able to deploy technologies that are well in advance to any that our world's governments have access to. However, Dr. Neruda portrayed 15 and his 7 directors as a benevolent force, not a hostile or controlling force. The 8 people who comprise this inner sanctum of the ISHIO are in possession of radical technologies that have been part of the Quantum TTP. However, there were also other extraterrestrial technologies that had been derived from recoveries of spacecraft or other alien artifacts, including various discoveries contained in ancient texts that had never been revealed before. All of this information and technology has been collected and developed within the ISHIO scientific core, all of whom possess clearances of level 12 or higher. This scientific core is called the Labyrinth Group, and consists of both men and women who have utilized the Quantum Intelligence Accelerated technologies to their advantage, and have created a secret organization within the ISHIO. When Dr. Neruda was explaining this to me, it got so complicated that I asked him if he could draw me a visual diagram of how all of these organizations worked. The Labyrinth Group consists of all the personnel within the ISHIO that qualify for levels 12, 13, and 14 clearances. 15 is the leader of this most secret organization. It was split from the ISHIO to enable secrecy from the NSA. And lower-ranking members of the ISHIO, which would facilitate the Labyrinth Group's agenda to create its own applications of the Quantum TTP. The Labyrinth Group is in possession of the pure technologies derived from the Quantum TTP. It takes these technologies and dilutes them to the point where the ISHIO or Special Projects Laboratory will sell them to private industry and government agencies, which includes the military. This secret organization is the most powerful organization on Earth in Dr. Neruda's opinion, but they do not choose to exercise their power in a way that makes them visible. Thus, their power is only discernible to their members. For about 40 years they have accumulated considerable wealth apart from the NSA's oversight. They have managed to build their own security technologies that prevent detection from intelligence agencies like the CIA or MI5. They are, for all practical purpose, in total control of their agenda. Perhaps this is what makes them a unique organization. Dr. Neruda had a clearance of level 12 and was still kept from vital information that only the director level was aware. And it was assumed that even 15 kept vital information from his directors, though this was never a certainty. The symbol used by the Labyrinth Group is 4 concentric circles. Each circle representing a clearance level, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and each circle had a unique insight into the agenda of the Labyrinth Group, and its coordination with the Quantum. 15 was an enigma to everyone within the Labyrinth Group. He had been a physicist before he became the executive director of the ISHIO. He was a renegade because he never interacted with the protocols and the political environment of academia. He operated outside of the institutions and was selected to be part of the ISHIO because of his combination of brain power, independence, and relative obscurity within scientific circles. He was one of the first to make contact with the Quantum and establish communication with them. The Quantum essentially appointed 15 as their liaison to the ISHIO, and 15 became the first to utilize the intelligence-accelerated technologies that the Quantum initially offered. These technologies not only enhance cognitive abilities, memory, and higher-order thinking skills, but also enhance the consciousness of the individual so that they can utilize the newly gained intelligence in a non-invasive manner. Meaning, they don't exploit their intelligence for personal gain at the expense of others. This apparent increase in both 15's and ethical consciousness caused him to create the Labyrinth Group in order to retain the pure state technologies of the Quantum TTP from the NSA. What technologies are released to the NSA? Are diluted forms of the pure state technology, which are significantly less potent in their military and surveillance and applications. What I expected to hear from Dr. Neruda was a secret organization of intelligent, evil elitists, individuals intent on exploitation and control. Why else would they want to hide beneath the cloak of such incredible secrecy? The answer, according to Dr. Neruda, was surprising. The Labyrinth Group view themselves as the only group with sufficient intellect and technology to develop a specific form of time travel technology. They are essentially focused on this agenda because they desire to prevent future hostilities that they believe will occur unless this technology is developed. The core team is assisting, but despite their considerable intellects, they have been unable to develop this technology. What I'm about to tell you will seem impossible to believe. But again, I'm only reporting what my notes say based on my initial conversations with Dr. Neruda. He explained to me that there are as many as 12 different extraterrestrial races currently involved in the past, present, and future of Earth and its destiny. The ISIO, because of its mission with the NSA, is the most knowledgeable group about the various agendas of these 12 alien races. Apparently there is an extraterrestrial race that may have hostile intent and the technological potential to disrupt the human social order and overtake it, as well as Earth itself. This concern is what motivated 15 to assign the Labyrinth Group's intellect and collective energy to create the ultimate defense weapon which they refer to as blank slate technology, BST, or a form of time travel. I don't pretend to understand all of what Dr. Neruda described regarding BST. My notes are a bit vague because he was talking so far over my head I didn't even know what to write in many instances. When the Ancient Arrow project came under the control of the ISIO, it was like all projects carefully scrutinized to determine if there were any technologies that could help in the overall agenda of developing BST. When it was determined that the Ancient Arrow project was in fact a time capsule from a future aspect of humanity, the Labyrinth Group seized the project from the ISIO and essentially began a misinformation campaign back to the NSA. Dr. Neruda was one of 2 scientists that held a Level 12 clearance and was asked to lead in the translation of the Wingmakers language and decode their various communication symbols. In this process, he became aware of how to decode their language and began to understand what they were trying to communicate. He became convinced that the Wingmakers were time travelers and possessed a form of BST. He also became convinced that there were 6 additional time capsules stored in various places around the globe, and that they held the technologies or insights that would enable the development of BST. The reason he defected was that somehow in the process of translating the Wingmakers language, he became a sympathizer of their philosophy. He felt that the Wingmakers were communicating with him and had selected him as their liaison. And when he acknowledged this to his superiors, he was felt to be a risk to the project's secrecy. Apparently, when personnel, regardless of clearance or rank, become known as security risks, they are given a memory therapy that essentially removes problematic experiences from their mind. Dr. Neruda felt certain that he was going to receive this therapy imminently, and could not fathom the results of losing his memories of the Wingmakers experience. Thus, he defected from the ISIO and the Labyrinth Group, the first to ever do so. When he had contacted me, he had defected only the day before. He told me that I would have to wait for him to contact me again to set up a rendezvous time and place. 3 days later he called and we met that same afternoon. I wasn't prepared to believe him, but I thought it was a provocative story and was worth spending an hour or 2 investigating. Anyway, what he proceeded to tell me in that first meeting is largely contained in this journal entry. He showed me photographs and documents from the Ancient Arrow project that appeared authentic to my eyes. He also showed me some of the technologies that were in development by the ISIO concerning holographic fractal objects, or FOs as he called them. These were incredible to observe, and equally impossible to explain, and I must admit that my first impression after seeing FOs in action was that any organization that could develop this technology was operating at a level well outside of the mainstream. It felt alien to me. It was then I became at least a partial believer. I called my employer and told them that I needed to take some personal leave. I took 1 week off and spent a significant portion of it with Dr. Neruda, asking 1,000 questions, which, for the most part, he had ready answers to. Gradually I became a reluctant believer with a healthy streak of skepticism. At the end of the week he asked me to take some of his materials and publish them. There were times that I honestly felt he was an extraterrestrial, and even now I'm not certain that he isn't. This from a person who 6 short months ago would have disputed DT and any other bump in the night phenomenon. He was convinced that the ISIO would not allow him to defect with his memory intact. He was fearful of their remote viewing technology and was certain that they would try to track him down. He wanted me to have possession of the materials only if I volunteered to do so, and was willing to publish them. And through all of this, he wasn't absolutely certain that the Labyrinth Group and their ET friends, the core team, were intending anything bad. He just didn't want his memory tampered with. I think he was mostly interested in exposing the Wingmakers time capsule and its philosophy and communication symbols. He never seemed that interested in exposing the issue and its secret organization, the Labyrinth Group. He told me about this entity only to impress upon me that he was part of an organization that had unusual powers and technologies, and to the extent they wanted to keep things under wrap, they would use their considerable powers to do so, which was why he had picked me at random to help him in getting this story out. Dr. Neruda was the most sincere individual I have ever met. Someone I would love to count among my friends. I was so impressed with his manners, communication skills, and intellect. At one time, I asked him what his ick was, and with all humility intact, he simply answered that there is no way to test it. And that the Labyrinth Group's members are not interested in ick so much as what he called fluid intelligence, or the speed with which alternative, creative solutions to a problem can be generated. He claimed this was the most important form of intelligence, and without it, one would not be able to time travel. In other words, he was convinced that time travel was not an independent technology, but was integral to the traveler. The time traveler must have a certain degree of fluid intelligence in order to withstand the stress inherent in time travel, and the best way to handle the stress was by having a high level of fluid intelligence. The thing I found so fascinating about Dr. Neruda was his descriptions of how information about ET, new physics, cosmology, prophecies, and the galactic hierarchy were hidden from the public, government, and even intelligence organizations. He told me that only one man had ever really tried to write about the NSA's Special Project Laboratory, and that was back in 1950, and according to my notes it was written by Wilbur Smith, who I believe was a journalist from Canada. Everything else that has been written is done so on the basis of pure speculation. Dr. Neruda said that when this paper was circulated it was the genesis of the issue in order to build another layer of what he called unacknowledged departments. He said that unacknowledged departments are rare in intelligence agencies, but those that do exist often telescope into greater levels of secrecy in order to remain hidden from public and private scrutiny. He also inferred that there were corporate members of the military-industrial complex that were involved in these unacknowledged departments. He claimed that the issue or its sister organization, the Special Projects Laboratory, would sell diluted technologies to private corporations and laboratories, which in turn would be commercialized for the military, and in some instances, even consumer use. Dr. Neruda permitted me to tape record 5 formal interviews with him. These are probably the best way to understand his perspective and the story that he has to tell. Even now as I'm writing this letter, I find myself doubting much of what he told me, while at the same time I can't imagine why he'd go to all this trouble if it were just a game or charade of some kind. It just doesn't make any sense in that context. So I'm stuck somewhere in the middle of belief and disbelief. I can only tell you that if only a small percentage of his story is accurate, then citizens and their politicians need to wake up. According to Dr. Neruda, even our highest-ranking government officials and military intelligence officers lack access to the information that he was privy to. But if these unacknowledged secret departments exist, and private contractors working on behalf of the military are involved with these secret organizations, some organization should be investigating this. And they should have powers to grant witness protection, immunity, and a variety of other inducements to get these secrets out to the public or, at the very least, our government officials. I have approximately 60 pages of notes from my initial discussions with Dr. Neruda and then 5 transcripts from the 5 interviews I conducted. I'd encourage anyone who's serious about understanding these issues to read the interview transcripts. They're probably our best records of what's going on behind closed doors relative to the ET phenomenon, secret organizations, and time travel.